Hello my fiery friends, the Infernoman here with the latest in broken deck technology. And for today's deck tech, we're going to be continuing to have fun in the historic no ban list with a deck that I kind of put together myself. And of course it is actually a super janky combo, but I'm super happy to see it actually get pulled off. Not gonna lie, of course, it's very hard to pull this off, but when you do, it's super satisfying. But without further ado, let's show you again what we're playing today, which is what I'm calling Ritual of Torment. But before we continue, if you do like any of the content that I do, please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you watch the content so you don't miss out on any of the gameplay, booster pack openings, deck decks, and so much more. Now to begin, let's actually cover the stats of the deck real quick for you. We are looking at a 2.8 mana curve here. We are playing in Golgari colors of black and green. We have 7 creatures in the deck, 11 instants, 13 sorceries, 5 planeswalkers, and 24 lands. Now I do want to say before we actually get started, I'm honestly not a big fan of combo decks out there, but this one is super janky and I actually had a lot of fun putting it together. But not gonna lie, the win rate on this is very low, so don't expect to win with it very often, but when it does go off, it's hilarious. So Ritual of Torment is trying to focus on one wacky little combo here. Obviously, we're going to take advantage of some of the busted cards that are currently in the format, such as Channel, but however, the way it's going to work is we're going to try to utilize Channel, and we're going to try to use Dark Ritual here to create a ton of mana, and then with that, we're going to try to cast our single and only copy of Torment of Hailfire. To explain, let's go over this card. Torment of Hailfire is a 2 mana and X sorcery that reads, repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. So ideally, the way it's going to work is, as I just mentioned, we're channeling up a ton of mana, utilizing that card, utilizing our Dark Ritual to add a little bit more mana to float, and ideally, by as fast as turn 2, we have all that mana, sacrificing our life with the channel to make the colorless mana to pay for Torment of Hailfire. We ideally just burn out our opponent on the spot, draining everything. Even if they try to sacrifice non-land permanents or any cards they hold in their hand and throw them away, this actually will be just enough to actually burn them out and get us the victory. That's basically the whole game plan for the deck. You may be wondering though, Infernoman, if you're doing this, why are you only having a single copy of it?
Good question.
Because honestly, the copy we need can actually be fetched out. All we just need to do is take advantage of our Demonic Tutors. Demonic Tutor is pretty simple. 2 mana sorcery that just says search your library for a card, put it into your hand and shuffle. So that's why we only need the single copy here. To ensure that we can get the game plan off, however, we also are going to have a little bit of protection. We're going to take advantage of Heartless Axe and Sheoldred's Edicts. To be honest, the only decks that have actually been beating us with this besides other combo decks has mostly just been creature decks that are taking advantage of Ragavans. That's honestly why I have instant creature removal, just to make sure that we don't lose to that. We need to maintain our life total as much as possible to ensure we have enough to cast off the Torment of Hailfire. So in order to ensure that we can actually pull off the combo on turn 2, one of our opening cards will be Gilded Goose. With this, of course, we create the food token. This allows us to fix our mana exactly to what we need in order to cast off everything else. With that, we'll also have a single copy of Once Upon a Time. This is mostly just to pull out that extra land to ensure that we can, of course, cast off what we need to on time. If you absolutely need to get it for a creature, this is where Plan B comes into the deck, which I'll talk about right now. So Plan B to the deck is going to be, of course, casting off one of the powerful colorless spells with Channel. Yes, I know that's not really an original thing, since most other decks are trying to pull this off as well, but this is mostly a backup plan. The backup plan itself really just comes down to what is our opponent trying to do. So with that, we have, of course, if you need to, you cast off Ugin, of course, just to blow out the whole board. Think of this again as the colorless Wrath. Kozilek, the Great Distortion here. Mostly this is just to help refuel your hand. Once you cast it, you then draw up to 7 cards just to get everything. And also the ability to discard stuff to counter a target spell is actually pretty cool too. Ulamog is mostly the catch-all. Yes, I know everyone already does this, but of course we at least need a single copy just to ensure that we can just cast off what we need to, and of course just exile stuff that stops them from making their game plan work. And if you want to troll your opponents, then definitely cast instead Emrakul. Emrakul, the Promised Land, allows us then to just take advantage of their whole cards because literally we just control them for a turn. So this way we could just kind of screw them over and kind of throw stuff out there just to hit them with a bunch of things. So just take that in mind. Now, even said that, there is a practical way, of course, to make all of this work, and even if you end up having to grind it out, we do have a plan C to the deck, which is where Karn, the Great Creator, comes into play. The card, of course, will shut off our opponent's activated abilities and artifacts they control, and on top of that, of course, we're going to use this to dig out cards from the sideboard. So even though we are playing in a best-of-1 format, Karn, of course, allows us to create a pseudo little board just to dig out certain things. So against our opponents that are trying to take this to the long game, you have Tormod's Crypt, of course, to make Graveyard Hate. You have Haywire Might, of course, to exile non-creature artifacts or enchantments. This can be helpful against enemy copies of the One Ring. We're going to also use Liquid Metal Coating if we want to troll our opponent and make them die a slow and agonizing death by using Karn's +1 ability with Liquid Metal Coating out. We can then turn on all of their lands into artifacts and then shut them off little by little. We have a single copy of the One Ring itself, just in case if we want to, of course, grind it out versus our opponent here. A single copy of the Godfarer Statue, of course, is just to slow them out and tax, of course, all their stuff while slowly pinging them to death. A Platinum Angel if we want to shut off whatever combo they're trying to do and make sure that we can't lose even if we go negative with life. And of course, one of the other surprise things that most people don't expect us to do because this is such a fast format is Cityscape Leveler to destroy a non-land permanent and turn it into a tapped Power Stone, which of course is shut off by Karn the Great Creator in the first place. Now, as far as the strategy for the deck, to be perfectly honest, you just need to get the combo off in any way, shape, or form, or just try to at least get plan B or C to get off the ground. Now, as I've played this deck a couple of times, I honestly had a hard time actually getting gameplay footage because most of the time, and I didn't mention this earlier, we tend to turn one Thoughtseize, and most of the time that strips away our opponent's key card in their enemy version of the combo deck, and they tend to scoop on the spot. Now, granted, if your opponent doesn't actually scoop from the Thoughtseize and they actually stick it out, or if you end up getting that turn 1 Gilded Goose, basically you're going to be free to then try to make your combo work or just try to make everything else pull off. Remember that Channel is colorless mana when you do sacrifice your life to make all that. So you can then cast off your Emeralds, Ulamogs, Kozileks, and Ugins, but also don't forget that Karn, while it is colorless, it is actually way less expensive than Channel. While you have it active, that allows you then not only to pull out your artifact from the sideboard, but also you should have just enough life paying for it colorless mana just to actually cast off whatever you pull out. So don't forget that, but also be careful of how much you're adding up. One of the things I will say that can sometimes screw you over is if you don't count correctly with the Torment of Hailfire while Channel is active, you might end up burning yourself out. So just be very careful for that. I've done that a couple times, but of course it still works out just the same. Now, the one thing I do want to say, of course, that some people were asking is, Infernoman, the way the deck is built, why not just go for simply the Channel plan? I mean, many would agree that if you just cast Channel and do the colorless thing, you basically can get your win instantly. Are we right about that? Correct! But what fun would that be? So the reason why I built the deck in the way I did is mostly just because, as you see from some of the additional footage I'm placing right now before we get to the finale, is the deck is super flexible. So if you want to give your opponent a quick one-hit KO by just exiling all their lands with a Ulamog, you can. But as you see, if you want to be sometimes a little more evil and just kind of give your opponent a slow and painful death, you can do that with this deck. And that's the reason why I built it the way I did. My only other final thoughts I want to leave behind before we wrap up this mini deck tech is, if you are a fan of this no holds barred format, if you are a fan of doing wacky combos that are a little bit off the beaten path, if you actually like playing decks like this that are much more versatile than meets the eye, definitely give Ritual of Torment a try. I can assure you that even though you may not win that much with this combo because some of the other combo decks in the format are a lot more practical, this one is definitely going to be something that's so much more satisfying and hilarious to pull off when you see your opponent literally throw away their whole hand when they sacrifice all of their non-land permanents and just end up still getting killed by a single copy of Torment of Hailfire. You will definitely feel satisfied. It is hilarious. It feels so good when it goes off, and you will surely not be disappointed. That's all I have for you today. Thanks again for watching, everyone. And just remember that no matter what you do play in the game of life, always be sure to burn bright. Later.